wish I could meet one, but please don't come and introduce yourself to me because I'll probably ask you for money. So don't. Thank you very much to the Commissioner. All right, let's move right along. So, as we are all aware, what was being outlined here is, in part, good governance. And this is only as good or as strong as the systems that hold it together. And so, let me introduce to you my next speaker, because they come from SARS, the South African Revenue Service. And the understanding here is that SARS plays a crucial role in the NLC's value chain, whether it be from tax compliance, these are the checks, or supporting the integrity of funded organizations. And so, please help me welcome to the stage SARS official, Ms. Minnie Hendricks.
Good morning, honourable guests. As a SARS official, you could see that I always follow instructions, and I entered as I was asked to do so. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and fellow champions of civil society. Commissioner Kieswetter has requested that I convey his sincerest apologies for not being able to join you this morning due to an urgent operational matter. And he wishes you a successful National Lotteries Indaba. And Commissioner Scholes, you know that SARS and the NLC is partnering closely, and he wishes you everything of the best for today and also for our guests. So it is both an honor and a profound responsibility to stand before you today at this Indaba on the topic of preserving integrity in the MPO sector and looking at the importance of ethical leadership. We gather not just as representatives of organizations, but as custodians of hope and agents of change for our country. We serve the country and the most vulnerable, each and every one of us, regardless of our role here today. We are servants. In a nation as diverse and dynamic as South Africa, the true measure of our progress is found in how we serve the most vulnerable among us. Our Constitution calls us to build a society rooted in dignity, equality, and justice. Yet for millions, these ideals remain aspirations rather than realities. Non-profit organizations and tax-exempt institutions, as we refer to them at SARS, are at the hands and hearts that reach where government and markets alone cannot, uplifting communities, providing relief, restoring dignity, and creating opportunities for those who need it most. You are indeed the bridge between policy and lived experience, between hope and tangible change. Our work as non-profit organizations or as regulators is not separate from the national project of building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. In fact, it is central to it. A capable state is one that partners with civil society, leverages the energy and innovation of all of you fantastic people, and ensures that no one is left behind. By stepping up our governance, our compliance, and our ethical standards, we strengthen not only our organizations, but the very fabric of our democracy. As a representative of SARS, I'm reminded daily of our higher purpose, to enable a tax and customs system that contributes to the well-being of all South Africans. Our mission is indeed not just to collect revenue. In fact, I have the unique job at SARS of giving away revenue. Not the most popular of my colleagues. But it is about fostering voluntary compliance, building public trust, and ensuring that every rand collected, or not in my case, every exemption granted serves the greater good. Compliance in this context is not a burden, it is an act of service. It is how we demonstrate our commitment to doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. It is how we honor the trust placed in us by society, by donors, and by the communities that we serve. And we would like to call to you to preserve the integrity of the non-profit sector. And it's more than just a slogan. It is a call to clarify our purpose, to codify our governance, and there's a lot of talk about self-governance in the sector, and SARS fully supports that, so that we can, without compromise, provide ethical, transparent, and impactful leadership in operations. You may ask, why did we want to speak this morning about ethical leadership? Ethical leadership is about restoring trust. And it is our collective responsibility, whether we are regulators, whether we are policy setters, or the people serving the communities, to ensure that MPOs remain true to their founding purpose. And this means rigorous donor vetting, transparent reporting, and a zero-tolerance approach to unethical behavior. Let us remember that the real value of an MPO is not in the tax deduction that it offers, but in the lives it changed, the dignity it restores, and the hope it brings to our nation's most vulnerable. By stepping up our ethical standards, we honor the trust placed in us by society and by SARS. I am going to then just speak to you about a topic that I'm sorry that our Commissioner couldn't share it with you this morning, but he speaks so well about ethical stewardship. And ethical stewardship is at the heart of every credible MPO. This means not only complying with the letter of the law, but in honoring the spirit of service, transparency, and accountability. And Commissioner Skull, so much of what you have said today speaks to those values of how we define ethical steward leadership. Every rand received and spent should be traceable to a legitimate, benevolent purpose. Unfortunately, at SARS, we have observed a disturbing trend where MPOs and tax-exempt institutions are being misused as vehicles for wrongdoing, whether to launder proceeds of crime, to regularize illicit economic activities, or to provide cover for activities that undermine our social fabric. Such abuse not only erodes public trust, but diverts resources away from those who need them most. It is therefore important that we remember and we understand the power of our purpose and not deviating from that. Quick money, easy money often comes with its own strings attached. The Statistician General will share with you later today some statistics on the growth of this sector, but at SARS we have seen that South Africa now has over 65,000 active tax-exempt institutions, and you are growing at more than 6% year on year. This is essential to the National Development Plan, and it is also one of the fastest growing job creations in our country. But whether you are registered as a non-profit organization, an NPC, or a trust, strong governance is non-negotiable. I will not bore you with what SARS has found about some of the misgivings in the sector. I'm sure we will speak to you about it a bit later. But I would like to offer you a few practical safeguards this morning as you all represent the sector. Please be aware of cash, anonymous, or unsolicited donations. They should always raise red flags. Always assess the source of funds, vet donors. Yes, as much as the donors are about vetting you, we ask you to also vet your donors and to understand what it is that they're asking of you. Codify your governance. Make compliance a habit, not a hurdle, and not something that just gets you into a tick box so that you can get funding. And commit to ethical, transparent operations to protect your mission, but most of all, the integrity of this very precious sector. Commissioner Kieswetter has asked that I do share with you, and that you're allowed to quote him, that he is concerned about the growth in gambling, both in illegal gambling but also in gambling as a whole and how it impacts on our society. And we are looking forward to engaging more, and we've noted the discussions that are formed around illegal gambling. But I think just as a society as a whole, gambling comes at a price. And I think most of you operate in environments where you see what some of those impacts of gambling are. We would like to ask the National Lotteries Commission if it funds specific organizations that are aimed at redressing or minimizing the impact of gambling, and whether one can maybe look at it in a specific context. I know that at SARS and within our area of tax-exempt institutions, we are looking at how the law provides for supporting organizations that support those who have an addiction. And we are not talking about an addiction that relates to the normal substances that we know, but the very real addiction of gambling and of online gambling. And then in closing, I would like to end off with some words of our Commissioner that he has imparted. And you know, this morning when I was asked to speak on behalf of our Commissioner because he couldn't make it, I was a little bit intimidated for a little bit, because I'm talking about leadership. And then I understood that the Commissioner has shared with each and every SARS employee, regardless of your rank in the organization, what leadership is all about. And that is that leadership, no one is entitled to lead. You do not require a position. Leadership is an inordinate privilege. It is not a title, but a set of behaviors. You cannot legislate followership, you have to earn it. And leaders must take their work seriously instead of taking themselves seriously. Leadership is about service to others, and I cannot think of a better audience where we can speak about leadership that is about service to others. And that is what we, at SARS, called stewardship. A steward is one who knows that he or she holds in trust what belongs to others, it is not theirs. Ladies and gentlemen, we wish you well in your deliberations, and let us all hold in trust the very special position that we have in society, where we care for the vulnerable, those that are often forgotten. And steward leadership is about each and every one of us stepping up. This morning I stepped up, I heeded the call of my Commissioner, and we wish you every success with the rest of your deliberations. I thank you.
Mine Hendricks from the South African Revenue Service, thank you very much for that important message. If you consume much of the stuff that's written about in the media, it's astounding the amount of money that are spent on gambling, and so it is truly a serious problem. All right, let's try and uplift our spirits a little bit. The NLC is committed to uplifting the arts in South Africa, and we're pleased to bring you the performance now of one of those talents that we celebrate here in South Africa. But before I call up on stage that talent, I see there are some hands that are rising up. May I kindly, I'm pleading with you, can I kindly ask you to reserve those comments for the commissions that we're going to go into. I promise I'm going to allow it, but we are going to have to take those questions inside the commissions, if you agree. I'm reluctant. I'm really reluctant. But I will allow it because I see there is insistence. All right. Can I ask for a microphone to go there?
Program Director, thank you very much, and sorry for putting you, even myself, in that difficult position. Program Director, my name is Tsepo Mashian. Program Director, I think, you know, I was sitting next to you here, and I raised an issue about having a very difficult job of starting with an apology, by apologizing. And we've forgiven you We've forgiven you. And everyone else, Chair, who've put you in this difficult position. But I think moving forward, it's fair that we, as the Indaba, it's fair that we understand whether we've got two different programs or we've got the same program. And I'm saying this because, and if there is a different program, maybe let's be given that program. I was following the program until I see different names and I see the program has changed, basically. And I think it's fair because this is an Indaba. And all the speakers who came before us actually mentioned the issue of building trust, restoring trust, trust relations. And I think for me, it's important that we understand that this is a collective engagement. Do we have a different program or do we have the same program? So that if we have a different program, we're given that one that will follow. And we're not lost in the process, Chair. And also there are issues that we think needs to be included on the program. For an example, very important program director is the declaration of this Indaba, and it's nowhere in the program. So I just wanted to raise those issues. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for raising that.
Sorry, Chair, don't marginalize me. Thank you. Program Director, I think my comrade here, he touched on this issue because we have looked at this program. Let me greet the chairperson and the Major D. We've been engaging with them for a very long time, behind closed doors. So, but when you look at the program, it looks like a program that is channeling us as the civil society. So we feel like as much as we've been engaging with the NLC, we should have been involved in terms of drafting this program. Because for us, we feel like in the Indaba, we need to engage. We see that we are being pushed to the commissions where the decision makers won't be there. We want to engage here, Chairperson. We're saying, why can't we have engagements here where the ministers are here, the commissioners are here? I agree they are working for us. So it can't be that they want to put us in a corner with two people from Lottery when we want to engage where they are decision makers. And in fact, we've got the new chairman of the Lottery. We want him to know that we need more money, more particularly in the art sector when he comes in. So also, we have the distribution agencies in the house. The distribution agencies are the ones which are marginalizing our people. And we can't say, I like what the mayor of Ekurhuleni said, to say, we need to listen to the people. The commissioner, which is a lovely person, we love our commissioner. But we're saying, when you talk of fairness, it mustn't be behind closed doors. Us who have got nothing to hide, so the NLC must not want us to engage in those small commissions where we are divided. We're in an Indaba, let's agree to disagree. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for raising those concerns. And let me give you a message that is being directed towards me, and it is that we are going to have to try to reconcile the program before we take lunch. And so we take your concerns on board. Thank you very much for raising those with us. I hope that message is taken to heart. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. All right, let's bring you then that important performance. I see there are more hands that are now rising. Please can I beg you, let me beg you to please engage just before lunch. Is it a different program or is it to do with the program as well? All right. We'll see if we can get the microphones to you. And whilst we do that, let's try and bring the artist that is here to help us soothe our souls a little bit. He is Explosive Disetso, a poet from Motswako Arts. Thank you very much. Disetso, please come on stage.
Erengile hlabe malotsana ke re qaqa ke re titi pote se tshepe tshepe ya bontshepe empa ntshepe Ha ke tshepe ke sethotokisi ke kgeleke. Bula hloho ya hao, mfe monyetla, bula pelo ya hao. Wena wa bebenya wa bebera o bifiswa ke o sa mamele. Ha ona tsebe kwala molomo mamele nna kajeno. Wena o behle wa behletsa wa nwa wa jabetsa wa ja wa kumetsa o dipuo ha o mamele. Metswalle ha e bale. O sebete ha o hlomphe mara go ntjwetse o baneng o sa itshwabele. Dumelang na ka lebitso ke Explosive Tisetso, and today I'll be rendering a piece titled Dreams. I hope you enjoy. Said that the richest place in the world, it is not China, it is not Dubai, it is actually the graveyard. Because in the graveyard, we have books that were never written. We have businesses that were never erected. We have paintings that were never painted. Because all of those people were scared, like you. But we are not in the graveyard yet. We are still here. We are still here, so our dreams matter. Ho tsong khorong. Nkadimendi tsebe majwana mabedi mabetsa hole binang mabina bina pina eseng menyepetsi o khatla palefatshe ha modula qhoa a hata fatshe khotsong khorong lebitso la ka ke toro. I am a dream, but I am dead because all you did was daydream. You forgot to make me a reality. You have made me a ghost when I wanted to make my essence a presence on earth. How bad, how sad. From east to west to where the sun sets, a net of tears flaunting the absence of stars in your Milky Way, suffocating your breath with your fears that breathe and speak the language silence to your imagination. See, I'm exposing your negation, vibration, and stuttering when a passion is a burning journey, but your legs are shambling, delaying climax, because already the world was shaking. The crowds were cheering. Your craft is art. Your craft is art. More effort. Hang in there a bit harder. It's a masterpiece, a gift. You do it without blinking, but you stopped. What were you thinking? I'm in your dreams. Why couldn't you achieve them? Sorry, I mean, me, the dream, why couldn't you achieve me? Now half my heart in half this chest beat, half a pulse, and less than half my words are spoken. I'm a dream, I don't speak, I am manifested and spoken. I speak of a poet that is outspoken. To give him credit, he was outstanding. Only made the mistake to depend on talent, yet forgot ingredients to nurture his dreams, hence they were left outstanding. Grieving, pleading like an embryo seeking for oxygenated blood, yet neglected like tintinnabulations of broken glass. What is the universe without a constellation of stars? What is talent when procrastination always leaves you with deepened scars? Di talente li di toro tsara di toro ibile toro fela ya badi pororo tsa madi ya pelonolo ho reketla o dutse o phuthile matsoho a leketla empa banna ba sebetsa e tshera di toro a e sebetse jwalo wa mphoqa o mphoqile ena taba rene re qoqile pele ba qaka e qakileng tsa hao di qeto re qetile o nongola ka bogabane boqitolo bo qhetseke ke o tshepile le qephe le qhitsa madi o qoqa palo betsa padi sehlohlolong we wotla we betsa mane ya ba mopheme o madi wa pholla wa qhanolla ya qala kgathatso ditoro ya batakatso paka tutudu ya masisa pelo monahano kelello bofoko di ba mamello bongkgono bongkhege bana beno ba o emetse mpa o hulanya maoto o tsamaya butle ako butle a ke utlwisisi ha o ro kgathetse deadlines on a Monday o lebetse red lights on a highway o setse o robetse a kotlella o bapala wena man o iketsetse. See, your mindset was not set to set the world on fire, so your dreams turned into ashes. Your deathbed is trauma, losing your breath to regrets. Your skin fuels. Insecurities are starting to cage in, trying to reach for the stars with broken pieces of money told in. You are trapped inside, trying to escape. Chopped inside, trying to rotate, to move to a different place, yet you are stagnant, confined in one place, but you You did this to yourself, didn't you? You continued to sleep and snore, you see. You rip what you saw. I saw what ripped your heart apart when Nimbostratus pregnant clouds gathered into a thunderstorm, interjected with both my palms, failing, even with my punctuated arms, flooded away the passion within my punctured lungs, exposed to the dryness of the nothingness inside. This explains why I'm an empty vessel. This tragedy entails why I am empty-handed. See, your dreams are skeletons, but only you can give them life. I mean, how do you set the dreams and goals and drag your feet swiftly, searching, seeking, clasping, feeding your destruction, Mr. Full-time procrastinator lacking in humanity? Where is your decency? I am just a dream that chose you. Thought it was just a fling. But action was just not your thing. Your cheerleaders and friends would have been proud of you, clapping for your successor. Your friends would have been proud of you, clapping for your successor. Not to mention a dance for the newspaper power press engraved your name in boldness. Congratulations for being a disappointment.
Explosive Mutswako from Mutswako Performing Arts. Well done to Explosive Digitisation. Thank you very much indeed. All right, while I have you in those spirits, let me quickly address the matter of the program. On your accreditation cards, you will notice that there is a QR code. If you scan that with your phone, you will see there is an updated program. And part of what happens with live programs is that things change sometimes as things go along. And so you will notice that we were meant to have Minister Pakstau, but in his place, he has asked to be represented by Minister Tolashe, who is with us here. I'm just painting an example of things changing along as we go. So I hope that is taken to heart. And so what we are going to do now, apart from addressing matters that have been raised here just before lunch, we're going to see if we can quickly press ahead so that we can get that keynote address. Let's now go to the compliance matters. Compliance sits at the core of a strong non-profit sector. Now, to speak on compliance under the NPO Act, please help me welcome Ms. Mpho Mngxitama, the Acting Deputy Director General at Community Development. Ms. Mngxitama, please come on stage. I wonder if Ms. Mngxitama is in the room with us. If she is not, I think we are going to have to move along, and let me then ask to move the program along, and let's go to statistics and national trends. Oh, she's here. Thank you very much. All right, I apologize. I could see someone coming from the back. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings to our principals who are in the house. My name is Lindy Madlala. I'll be standing in for Ms. Mngxitama, who is not here today. I just have a short presentation on compliance. I'm coming from the Chief Directorate NPO that is responsible for registration and also ensuring compliance within the NPO sector. My presentation will relate to the mandate of the department as assigned by the NPO Act, and I'll also introduce you to the new compliance issues that have been actually brought about by the amendment of the NPO legislation as contained in the General Laws Amendment Act. So we felt that we need to actually use this opportunity to popularize what the NPO Act actually advocate the new one, the amendment one, in terms of compliance by the sector and also by the department as well. I think we all know that the compliance relates to, with the current legislation, it relates to submission of reports by the NPO sector. That would be your narrative report and your financial report as well. But the new amendment legislation imposes, new directives that the NPOs have to ensure that they adhere with. The first amendment that is very much key, this particular legislation requires all NPOs that are operating outside the country to register with the NPO Act. These are the NPOs that may either be receiving donations or making donations outside the country. This particular legislation requires that all such NPOs should register with us so that they are regulated within the legislative framework. This act actually aims at preventing anti-money laundering and terrorism financing within the sector. This is why this particular legislation was brought about. Some of the NPOs were actually key in making inputs into this particular act. Of more importance, from the sector, in terms of this particular legislation, governance issues are now made compulsory by this particular legislation. If you remember, the previous legislation was only talking about encouraging the sector to promote good issues of governance. With the current legislation, governance is actually compulsory. It requires us to ensure that as we do our business as the sector, we maintain, a strong practice of governance. This particular legislation also, in one of the sections, requires us to screen our office bearers. We know that as NPOs, we work with office bearers who are at the center, at the core of managing this particular NPOs. So now what has been changed in terms of the new legislation, we are no longer going to register any other person without having them undergoing the screening process. What does this mean? We are going to screen the office bearers as we are applying for NPO registration against different registers. For instance, the register against delinquent directors. As you register, those particular board of directors are subjected to that particular screening. We also screen them against the register where a person has been found to be guilty in whatever offenses. The Act also continues to outline different types of offenses. So such people won't be fit, to register as an NPO. Upon reporting, we also ask similar questions to NPO in terms of their office bearers, so that continuous screening happens at registration and also at reporting period. So there is that particular screening process that takes place, which then gives the director of the NPO powers to disqualify office bearers. What does it mean? If it has been found that this particular office bearer has committed, certain types of crimes as outlined in the Act, or maybe that particular office bearer has been found to be guilty of having an offense in terms of the child protection register. We know all those particular registers that actually, assist us to screen, then that particular individual will then be disqualified. And there is a process outlined by the legislation as to what needs to happen within the organization to ensure that they are aware and also they remove such office bearers. So colleagues, it's important for us as NPOs, as we recruit, our board of directors or our governance structure, to ensure that those particular individuals are actually clean and not affected by this different register that I made mention. So the powers have now been given to the director to disqualify, such individuals. Furthermore, the Act now requests for certain type of information. In the past, there was no additional information that would be requested from NPOs. Now the legislation requires us to ask certain type of question that is additional from what you used to provide to the NPO Directorate. It asks information that relates to people who are behind the scenes controlling the NPOs. Those are called control structures. This is applicable in case if the NPO operates outside the Republic. Remember, I spoke about two categories to say if an NPO receive fund or make donations outside the Republic of South Africa or is performing certain activities, there are certain additional information that would be required in such NPOs. Those are the NPOs that I said should register compulsorily. So there will be ongoing, seeking of additional information. That information relates to the persons who are behind the organization, the persons, the details, personal details of those particular individuals. So there's a lot of information that will be required for NPOs that are actually, embarking in such activities. And the director of the NPO is then requested to keep the NPO register. So you must know that that particular information will be kept within the department, and the new legislation also requires us to make that particular information publicly available for any person who may request such information. So that's part of the compliance requirement that has been imposed to NPOs and to the department as well. There's also a section that requires us to, as a department, it does not relate to NPO, but it requires us as a department to work together with different, agencies, your SARS, as the presentation is highlighted earlier by NLC, to say there should be interface by different departments, different agencies, your law enforcement agencies, FIC, etc. So which means that at registration point, we should be able to interface with different agencies. And should there be additional information required by these particular agencies, the Act has made provision to make that particular information readily available without any challenges, of which in the past it was not the case. But now, that's why as a department, we had to also fast-track the process of finalizing the online platform for servicing NPOs in terms of registration and compliance. So that we're able to easily interface with our stakeholders that we're working with NPOs. The new Act, ladies and gentlemen, also makes provision for the department to impose sanctions. This is a new section that has been introduced in this particular legislation. It's sanctions that pertains to issues in case there is any non-compliance with the issues that I've just highlighted, or any issues pertaining the Act. Remember, as an NPO, we're supposed to notify the department in any changes that you make as an institution. Either you're making changes on your board, any information that, the organization is making as changes, they have to be, they have to notify the department, and failure to submit reports and also to provide additional information that I spoke about. This particular legislation is introducing sanctions. Type of sanctions, there's sanctions that relates to reprimand, which is part of, we call it administrative sanctions, where the department can reprimand the NPO, or perhaps even different sanctions are there, or even replace maybe the project manager with someone else, depending on the nature of the offense that may have been identified. There are different sanctions tabled in this particular Act. So colleagues are also requested to say, go and look at that particular sanction so that you understand, different sanctions. There's even a sanctions that proposes a term of imprisonment, especially those NPOs that are operating outside the country and not having registered with the department as expected. So there are serious implications for such, NPOs, and it's a new amendment that has been made. I'm just trying to squash everything to summarize all this particular sanction. I've made a reference to the issue around access to information, that the Act now demands that the department should actually, make information available, but taking into account, as we all know, the issues around POPIA, protection of personal information. So the Act does take cognizance of that, but expect us to provide that particular information. It also outlines the process of disqualification and imposing sanctions. So it's not that the department will unilaterally, impose sanctions, but there are certain processes that are stipulated in the Act to ensure that the process is fair and the NPOs are given, the hearing in terms of whatever that would have been identified as misconduct. So what we are requesting to you colleagues as NPOs, we are saying that as NPOs, we must ensure that we exercise due diligence when we elect office bearers by conducting background checks, before we bring these particular office bearers into the office, because failure to do that will jeopardize, the opportunities for NPOs to operate without, having their members being disqualified and also disrupting the activities of the NPO. So it's very important that as we move forward as NPOs, let's also do, due diligence of our office bearers before we put them into office, and also check, use these particular registers that I spoke about, your CIPC register, which has got, delinquent directors. As NPOs, that information is accessible, so you can also use such, registers. And I spoke about the United Nations Security Council. This is a register where individuals have been found to be, part of terrorism financing or issues around terrorism financing or issues around financial crimes. So there's a register where those particular individuals are recorded. So it's also requested that NPOs also visit such registers, and also just check if your office bearers are not, having criminal record or have been listed somewhere as offenders, because this also, according to this particular legislation, deem those particular individuals to be disqualified by the director. So, colleagues, I think in terms of non-compliance with submission of reports, we had a very high number of non-compliance of NPOs in terms of submission of reports. It's a pity I don't have, the statistics with me, but more than half of NPOs across all provinces that are registered are actually non-compliant with submission of report. Now I'm talking about the non-compliance that is there in our previous legislation, the legislation NPO Act, to say we plead, to colleagues to make sure that they actually submit their reports, whatever amendments that you are actually making. If you are not communicating them to the department, that tantamounts to non-compliant, because the Act also regards such as non-compliant, because you are supposed to conduct your business in line with the founding documents that would have submitted to the department. Financial reports as well, we are pleading that colleagues submit such financial reports as required by the Act, and we have even made reporting. We have simplified it, especially for those NPOs that are not funded. We have developed some, standardized forms to make it easy for NPOs that are not funded to be able to submit reports, because we know that the costs of financial, practitioners, your auditors, is very high. So at times we find that NPOs that are not funded are not able to fulfill that particular, responsibility. So we have standardized the forms and request that, NPOs try to ensure that they fulfill such a responsibility. Yeah, I spoke about the administrative sanctions that are being proposed by the legislation, and we hope that we will work together as the sector to ensure that we meet the new provisions that have been made by the new legislation. I also request that the colleagues, because remember, you're registered either as a non-profit company or as an NPO. Some of colleagues have got dual registration. Let's go and look at the NPO as amended, by GLA, General Laws Amendment Act. It's a very important piece of legislation that our colleagues have to be, affair with, because it has got a lot of implication. So if we don't understand it, we may find ourselves, committing a misconduct or be in contravention with the legislation without us knowing. So it's very important that we do that. So this is what I wanted to share with you in terms of ensuring that you sort of get a glimpse of what is proposed by this particular new legislation and what is expected of us as the new information that we have to submit to the Office of the Directorate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lindy Mkwanazi. She only introduced herself as Lindy. I don't know whether she thought she was tricking me. I've got you now. All right. I bring you some good news, ladies and gentlemen. The two stakeholders that raised their hands a little earlier, I'm told to assure you that once we break into commissions, you will have in those commissions members of the executive from the NLC, including some of the board members. They are going to be split evenly in these commissions. I hope that settles you a little bit, that you will have those commissions composed of executive members. All right. And we are going to take you as well. If you have one pressing question, I will take your hand. But I want us to quickly move so that we can be able to take lunch and have the keynote address from the minister. So we will take the hands just before we break for lunch so that you are heard. Okay. I hope. I promise you we will take your hand. Okay. Let's try and press along. So we've heard from Lindy Mkwanazi from the Social Development Department outlining the NPO Act. Let's now invite on stage someone from the Statistician General's office, because this is all about data this time around that helps us understand the poverty, inequality, and job creation needs. And we all know just how important that is for our country. And it guides us, importantly, on where the most need is. Now, to present the latest national trends, please welcome Mr. Simakaleng Tulare, the Acting Deputy Director General at the Statistician General's office. All right, he's here.
Thank you. Thank you, Program Director. Let me start by greeting the Honorable Minister who's here with us, the esteemed Mayor of the city, Chairperson of the Board, and as well as the Commissioner. And to all of you who are here, our distinguished guests, I greet you all. So good morning. Can we start from the beginning with the presentation, please? I think it looks like it's in the middle already. There is a section before this one that we'll be starting with. But in the meantime, while the presentation is being corrected, as the Program Director has mentioned, I will be speaking to all of you, or essentially just sharing a story about our country and focusing on poverty, job creation, and inequality within our country. It's of course a story of numbers, and I will try by all means to make sure that I limit those and let the numbers speak for itself. We can move to the next slide. In terms of the currently as we speak now, we are 63 million in the country. The prior year, 2024, we were about 62 million, and we have seen a growth of about 1.23 million. On the next slide, the next slide essentially shows, how all this big number, the 63 million, is made up of. The 57% of Northern Cape, which is the smallest province in terms of numbers, and it is sitting at 1.4 million. On the next slide, we'll see as people are coming into this earth within our country, that essentially becomes the main driver of our population growth. Of course, there are others like net migration, people coming in, some of them leaving, but when we check that net, we're looking at additional people of about 200 million or so. Next slide. And in terms of the breakup, we can all see on the slide, we've got a population of about 37.3 million, which makes up of 59.1% of the entire population, made up of children and youth. So this really shows that our population is still young, and there's still a whole lot of potential within our population. On the next slide. And we'll now be focusing on the living arrangements and education. And these are the numbers that will be speaking to how people are living with mothers only. So this, as you can see, is less than a third of the children who are living with both their parents. And in the middle, you can see that our numbers are showing that at the country level, we've got about 45. It's like at the top, if you look at Eastern Cape, Popo, and Northwest. Focusing on the middle, which is the orange column of the whole graph, you can see that there's quite a big number of percentage whereby we have got children who are living with their mothers. On the right, the gray portion, it talks about lived with neither. This would be maybe grandparents or any other, caretakers of the children. And whereas the blue one will be speaking to those kids who are living with both parents. And the last one is just the fathers, and as you can see, the percentage is quite small. So this graph really shows that, mothers are really bearing, the responsibility when it comes to raising the kids. On the next slide, it talks about, women-headed families or households. And as you can see again, those provinces that we spoke to earlier, they are coming up again. Your Eastern Cape, your Free State, your Limpopo, in terms of, those households that are headed by women. However, when you check, you will find that they do not have anyone who is bringing in income, into the household. So the picture doesn't look good at all. Moving on to the next slide. And on the next slide, on education. And as you can see, starting on your right, and we are tracking, kids aged between 5 years and 24 as well. We can see that when it comes to primary school and including secondary school, for children aged 5 to 15, we are doing quite well. It's almost 100%. We're looking at 96.1% of which all the children within the country are attending some form of school. But however, it starts to dip beyond the age of 15. And that is where you'll start seeing, 16, 17 year olds, starting to get into 24-year-olds, who are still stuck in secondary school. And I would like to draw your attention to, how thin, the TVET and university into university and TVET. And again, we've got this big gray area which speaks to, those 15 to 24-year-olds who are not in education and not even receiving any form of training. So these are people who are just, probably just sitting around the corner, or sitting at home and not doing much. And I will be getting back to that number, and specifically this group at a later stage. On to the next slide. And here we see top reasons, specifically for males not attending school. You can see there it says it's poor academic performance. And there's quite a large, gender disparity when it comes to bring your attention to, if you look at the graph, second from the bottom, family commitments. And here we can see that about 11% of females, are the ones who are affected by this particular reason. They are expected to take up family responsibilities, and therefore they get to miss on attending school or any other form of education. And talking about this slide and looking at the previous slide, which I spoke to about mothers taking care of their families, one can see the pattern, And obviously, as we are here, the plea is that as we are doing discussions and deciding on the funding, let's just make sure that we channel those fundings into the right areas. On to the next slide. The next section will be focusing on economy and labor market insights. When looking at, next slide. When looking at the South African economic growth, next slide please. Thank you so much. When we're looking at our country's economic growth, we are seeing that we grew by only 0.6% in 2024. And this is an annual GDP growth that we are tracking constantly since 2015. And you can see, you can see the dip, in 2009 when there was a big economic shock the recession that happened. There was a drop there. But again, you can see that there was a big one, and we are all aware of the year 2020 when the COVID happened. But I would like to draw attention to the years, 2025, 2026, and 2027, where we were realizing a very good growth, which is in line with the NDP goals. Unfortunately, as you can see, we are yet to start hitting those levels when it comes to economic growth. And on to the next slide, we are actually diving into focusing on the year 2022 up until this current year. And you can see when you zoom in that we're not growing at all. We're looking at a growth of 1.5, 1.9, and then in the next quarter we get a drop of minus 1.4. So that fluctuation, we're not getting any growth at all. On to the next slide. This slide essentially gives us a breakdown of those areas or industries that are contributing mainly into the economy of our country. And you can see on the slide that finance, made up of real estate, business services, banking, and so forth, they are the ones who are contributing more into the growth of our economy as a country. And of course, there are other areas like personal services, manufacturing. Actually, manufacturing used to be one of the top ones in the past decades. However, it has dropped, as you can see. Next slide. The next section will be just diving into the labor market's outcomes, talking specifically about unemployment and its related variables. Next slide, please. Colleagues, as you can see, in the third quarter of this year, 2025, unemployment rate decreased by 1.3%. And we are currently sitting at 31.9%, of our people who form part of the working age or working group being unemployed. I will start on the left. We have got, at the top, we've got about a working age population, focusing on the ages 15 to 64. And I hope there's an understanding of why we are starting with age 15. This is a question that comes up a lot of times. And it's mainly because we are following international standards. And even if you can check conditions of employment, they do talk about the fact that anyone under 15, they belong at school. However, the minute you reach 15 and above, you can, of course, start being part of the working force. So we have got the working force of about 41.9 million. And when we break it down, we've got about 25.1 million of those people who are part of the labor force. And we are saying they are part of the labor force and breaking it down because we have got about 17.1 million who are employed as we speak. And we've got about 8 million who are not employed. And this essentially becomes, the official unemployment rate that we are talking about, which is 31.9%. And there is another section or breakdown which speaks to outside of the labor force. And there we're looking at 16.9 million of people. And it's broken down like this. We've got 4.5 million of people who are potential labor force. And we break it down further. And these are people who are, if we break it down further, they are either discouraged, to continue looking for work. They've been looking for quite some time. So they are tired of looking. And there are those, who are available and seeking a job, who are available but not seeking a job. And we also have got those who are not available, but they are seeking. A little bit confusing, I understand, but there are, technical, descriptions and definitions to all this information that I'm sharing with you. And however, we do see a very big number of about 12.4 million, and those are people who are outside the labor force. And this could be, people like people who are staying home and taking care of the chores at home, and they are agreeing to do that. It's their option. Or it could be people who are studying and therefore, at the moment, they are not interested in finding a job. On the next slide, this slide essentially speaks about the combined rate of unemployment taking into consideration the potential labor force that we spoke to. As we did mention, we have seen a decrease of about 0.6%, which led us to 42.4%. And this 42.4, it's an addition of the official unemployment rate, which is sitting at 31.9%, and as well as the combined unemployment and potential labor force. In terms of numbers, would be looking at 12.5%. And as I did mention, the potential labor force is broken down into two categories, which is those people who are available to work, but there are reasons why they are not working currently. And it's what we spoke to earlier on. Next slide. Unemployment rate amongst our black people is sitting at 35.8%. And if you can see, you'll remember that 31.9%, which is the official unemployment rate of the country. You can see that when you just start focusing on black people, you know, their rate or percentage is even higher than, you know, the country one. However, when you look at other population groups, you know, white people is only sitting at 8.1, Indians 39.9, and so forth. Next slide. On the next slide, we're looking at the graduate unemployment. We are well aware that we have got a whole number of graduates who can't find work, you know. And on that, we are saying unemployment rate for this particular group, which is the graduates, it decreased by 1.8 percentage points from 12.2% in the second quarter of this year to about 10.4%. And that is how the numbers are showing there. Thank you so much. And here we're looking, this slide, you know, unpacks, you know, the youth aged, as we did mention, starting 15 to 24. And again, 25 to 15 to 24 and 25 to 34 years old. And if you look at the bottom, just talking about the bottom of the graph itself, you can see that for 15 to 24 years old, we have got about 58.5% of this group, you know, being unemployed. And 25 to 34, we have got about 38.4. These are huge numbers. These are big numbers. Something must definitely be done about this. And absorption rate essentially speaks about those who are currently in the job market. And participation rate would be speaking to, you know, those who are part of the labor force, actively looking day to day, submitting CVs or going wherever they need to go in order to look for work. Next slide. On this slide, you will remember I spoke about, on one of the initial slides we were focusing on, I spoke about the green area whereby these are, you know, our kids, our brothers, our sisters who are not in employment, who are not in education, and are not even getting any training. And with those, if you break it down into ages, you get to see the actual numbers. It's quite a big number, colleagues. So for Q3 of 2025, the ages 15 to 24, it's about 3.5 million. And then we have got, you know, 6.8 million when we're looking at the rest of the age groups. So maybe this is, you know, where we need to focus on, because like I did mention, these are the people who, you know, are not doing anything, you know. So as we are thinking about funding, we might want to, you know, focus on maybe that 3.5 million. Next slide, please. So between the quarters, youth with experience, this slide essentially speaks to, you know, our youth who have got experience versus those who does not have experience. And here we are referring to any form of experience, work experience. And as you can see, those with experience, you know, they are more likely to find a job, you know, as compared to those